The ceiling fan whirred above her like a lazy metronome. Priya had just slipped into the shallow, fragile sleep of someone who works too much and rests too little. She lived alone by choice. A third-floor flat in a quiet pocket of Pune. Nothing fancy, but enough for her plants, books and peace. Then came the sound. Not a knock but a thud. Followed by another. Louder. More deliberate. She sat up in bed. Confused. Listening. But the door shuddered in its frame. Her mind raced to make sense of it. Earthquake. Drunk neighbor. Wrong door. The final crash shattered the latch. The wooden door splintered inward with a sickening crack, echoing down the tiled corridor. A foot swung through the opening. Then shoulders. Then 3 men. Priya didn't scream. She froze. Not paralyzed, calculating. Phone. Where was her phone? She'd left it on the couch. 10 feet away. Too far. She ducked behind the bed instead. Heart slamming into her ribs like it was trying to escape her body. She heard them talking. Not shouting, coordinating. Efficient. One of them said.
Main kitchen check Cardahoon.
Another.
Laptop kid har high?
She peeked through the crack between bed and wall. One man in a hoodie pulled out the drawer of her desk and appended it, scattering pens, receipts, a photo of her parents. Her breath caught too loud. He turned. Listen. He slid back. Curled herself smaller. The third man moved into her bedroom. She felt rather than saw his presence. The air shifted. He braced. He looked around, shone his phone light lazily across the shelves, brushed a hand across her nightstand, took the gold ring she'd inherited and slipped it into his pocket without ceremony. Then he left. They didn't find her. Maybe they didn't care to. Maybe the job was just grab and go. But they left the place torn open. Her things scattered. Her sanctuary violated. 5 minutes. That was all it took. When the door slammed shut behind them, she stayed there. On the floor. In the dark. Listening to silence like it was a living thing. Her fingers were shaking, but she made herself crawl out, step by step, like someone walking into a war zone after the sirens stopped. Her phone was gone. So were her backups, her passwords, the files she'd meant to encrypt but hadn't. The worst part. There wasn't a dramatic confrontation. No screaming. No heroics. Just quiet, targeted invasion. Like they knew where to look. Like they'd done this before. When the police arrived an hour later, she told the story in pieces. Flatly, clinically, like someone reporting a software bug. They took notes, nodded sympathetically, and gave her the usual.
We'll look into it.
They wouldn't. That night, after they left, she walked into the bathroom. Stared at herself in the mirror. Her face didn't look like hers anymore. Drawn, pale, hollow-eyed. But her jaw was clenched like granite. She turned off the light. Then sat at the edge of her ruined bed, whispering one promise to herself.
Never again.
Priya didn't sleep for a week. Not really. She'd lie in bed, eyes wide, fingers curled around a kitchen knife under her pillow. Every sound became suspect. Pipes clanking, scooters revving, neighbors coughing. She wasn't paranoid. She was awake now. The world was louder when your trust had been cracked open like glass. Her landlord offered an apology and a quick fix.
We'll put in a new lock. Same as before.
She laughed once. Not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. She declined. Politely. Then called in her own contractor. Reinforced steel door. 3-point locking system. Peephole with 160-degree fisheye lens. The man installing it said.
This is the kind of door we put in for gold shops.
Good.
He said.
That's the level I want.
The next day she bought a baseball bat. She didn't know the rules. Didn't care. The weight of it in her hand brought a strange comfort. She practiced swinging it in the air. Her form was terrible. Her intentions were crystal. Then came the cameras. She read everything. Reddit forums, reviews, obscure blog posts about signal range, infrared blind spots, power backup options. She didn't want just surveillance. She wanted foresight. She installed them herself. Drilled into the plaster, wired the system through an independent UPS, linked it to cloud storage. Positioned the angles like a chess player arranging pieces on a board. She named the network Come Back and Try. The apartment was still hers, but it didn't feel like home. Not yet. By week 3, she stopped jumping at every noise. But her mind never sat still. She noticed things she used to ignore. The stranger who lingered in the alley too long. The courier who didn't meet her eyes. The man at the tea stall who always looked at her before looking away. She started tracking patterns. Not obsessively, methodically. She made a spreadsheet. Potential threats. She updated it daily. Then one night, walking home from the grocery store, a man brushed past her too close. She didn't flinch. He turned. Stared him down. Didn't blink. He looked confused. Then he looked away. Something had changed. At the gym she started training. Not for fitness, for utility. Muay Thai. Krav Maga. The instructor, a former cop, watched her hit the pads.
You've got anger?
He said. She didn't answer. She just kept punching. Her friends noticed.
You okay?
They'd ask. She'd smile tight, controlled.
Never better.
They said she was becoming paranoid. She said she was becoming prepared. They didn't understand the difference. She didn't explain. One day, in her still half-trashed apartment, she looked at herself in the mirror. A scar on her knee from when she'd fallen that night. A healing cut on her hand from a splinter. Muscle tone beginning to return. Something steelier in her gaze. She pulled up the camera feed on her phone. Watched the footage of herself coming home. Her walk was different now. Less uncertain. Less prey. She named the camera count. FORTIFIED. It wasn't about fear anymore. It was about control. It was about building a version of herself no one could walk through. Not without consequences. It was a Thursday afternoon when Priya first walked into the NGO. The building was small but warm, tucked in a side street behind a crowded market in Pune. A stark contrast to the cold, calculated world she'd built for herself. Her friend Asha had urged her to visit. You have the skills. You should be helping others. Priya had resisted at first. She was still figuring out how to help herself. But something had changed. Something inside her stirred when she saw the faces of the women coming in and out. Mothers, daughters, wives, all carrying different versions of the same story. She walked past the entrance sign. Support for survivors of violence and abuse. Inside, the room smelled of lavender and hope. A far cry from her own cold, locked-down apartment. The volunteer coordinator, a woman named Rekha, gave her a soft smile.
You look like someone who knows what it means to feel trapped.
Priya didn't answer right away. Instead, she nodded.
I do.
Rekha gestured to a small classroom at the back.
This is where we teach safety and digital literacy. Would you be willing to help?
The first time Priya stood in front of a group of women, she was quiet for a moment, absorbing the weight of their stories. Some women were shaking, others silent. A few had eyes like hers, bruised from something invisible, something internal. She didn't want to be one of those women anymore. Not that version of herself. She started small. Simple things at first. How to spot phishing emails, how to change a password, how to set up two-factor authentication.
If you don't want someone in your life, don't let them in your phone.
She told them, her voice calm but fierce.
Everything starts there.
But as she went on, Priya's lessons evolved. She didn't just teach them about digital safety. She taught them how to protect their lives, how to make an escape plan, how to fight back, and how to never let the fear of what could happen keep you from taking control of what's yours. One evening, as she was locking up after a session, Rekha pulled her aside.
I've been talking to the women about you.
She said.
They feel like they can learn from you. You don't just teach them to survive, you teach them to fight back. To live again.
Priya didn't know how to respond. She wasn't a teacher. She was just someone trying to rebuild herself, brick by brick. But something in those words hit her deeper than expected. The idea that she could be a source of strength, not just for herself but for others. She hadn't let anyone see her vulnerability in months. Now, here was a room full of people who understood that feeling of being vulnerable. The same quiet terror of being small, of being othered in a world that wanted nothing more than to crush you. A few weeks later, Priya was invited to a panel discussion. The topic was security in the digital age. She debated whether or not to attend. She wasn't an expert. She wasn't a guru. Just someone who had taken the hardest steps to build back her life. But Rekha insisted.
They need someone like you. Someone who's lived it.
She agreed. She didn't know why at the time. Maybe because she had something to prove. To herself. To the world. The event was packed. A dozen women from all walks of life. Priya sat nervously on stage, alongside a couple of tech experts and a police officer. The moderator turned to her first.
Priya, can you tell us what steps women like you can take to protect themselves in a world where digital stalking and abuse are rampant?
Her mouth went dry. She had never been in front of an audience like this. But she had been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. The words spilled out in a rush.
I wish I could tell you that there's a simple answer, a quick fix. But there isn't. The hardest part isn't protecting your data or your devices, it's protecting your mind. The world makes you think you're weak when you're in danger. It makes you feel small, helpless, invisible. But if you don't see your own strength, no one else will.
There was a long silence in the room. Then came the quiet murmurs of agreement. One woman in the front row wiped away a tear. Another nodded, arms crossed tightly in front of her chest.
I'm not telling you that you can't be hurt.
Priya continued.
But I'm telling you that how you fight back matters. It's not about being invincible. It's about knowing where your power lies. And it starts with you, every day, in every decision you make.
As the night ended, women came up to her. Some hugged her. Some shared their stories. One woman, hands shaking, whispered,
"Thank you for showing me that I can get out."
Priya felt something heavy in her chest, like she had just lifted a boulder off her back. These women weren't just survivors. They were warriors too. And she wasn't alone anymore. She realized that the vulnerability she once hid from the world was no longer a weakness. It was the thread that tied her to them. That night, Priya stayed up late, typing away at her laptop. She wasn't writing a blog post. She wasn't writing a guide. She was writing something personal. A letter to herself. She had gotten to the point where she no longer feared the broken pieces of her past. She had turned them into a foundation, a blueprint for the future. And for the first time, she didn't feel the need to hide. Not from herself, and not from anyone else. She clicked publish on her new blog post under the pseudonym Iron Orchid. How to build a fortress and still let the light in. The words felt different now. Not just an instruction manual. Not just a warning. They were a message. A message of strength. Of resilience. Of hope. Started with an email. Priya didn't recognize the sender's name. It was a no-reply account, nothing unusual. She opened it, her eyes scanning the message.
I know where you live. You're not as safe as you think.
Her stomach dropped. She slammed the laptop shut, her heart thumping in her chest. It was a gut reaction, an instinctual panic she couldn't suppress. Her mind flashed back to the night of the break-in, the feeling of being watched, the breath on the back of her neck. For a moment, she thought it was just some random trolling, a message from someone who read her posts and wanted to get a rise out of her. But the email wasn't the only thing. The first sign of retaliation came a week later. Priya was walking home from the NGO when she saw the man again. The one from the tea stall, the one who always watched her. He was standing in the alleyway just ahead. This time he didn't turn away when their eyes met. His gaze didn't flinch, didn't drop. Held. A chill crawled up her spine. She gripped the strap of her bag tighter, her pulse quickening. But she kept walking straight toward him. Not to confront but to assert control. The message was clear in her mind.
You won't intimidate me. I'm not afraid of you.
When she passed him, she didn't even blink. Her heart pounded, but she refused to show fear. She'd learned that the first step in taking back control was never to let anyone see you tremble. As she walked past, the man stepped in behind her. His footsteps matched hers. Her breath hitched, but she didn't turn around. She made herself keep walking. But then, crunch, a gravel stone underfoot. Then another, and another, until there were heavy, deliberate footsteps behind her. Closer. She felt the air behind her shift, like a predator closing in. Whoa. Her instincts screamed, but her body didn't freeze this time. She pivoted on her heel and swung her bag around. Sharp, heavy thud. The man grunted and stumbled back, caught off guard. She didn't hesitate, didn't even think. She raised her arm again, this time to deliver another strike. She'd had enough. He stepped back further, hands raised in mock surrender. He growled, his voice low.
Take it easy, lady.
Priya didn't answer. She stood firm, eyes narrowing. She wasn't fighting. She was just holding her ground, showing him that she would not be an easy target. He cursed under his breath and retreated into the alley, vanishing like a ghost. 2 days later, Priya came home to find her front door ajar. Her heart clenched, her mind instantly flashing back to the break-in months ago. She pulled out her keys and crept inside, prepared for the worst. The apartment was silent, eerily so. The locks had been untouched, the windows closed. But it wasn't the absence of things that unnerved her. It was the feeling of intrusion, of something she couldn't yet put a finger on. The place felt wrong. She glanced at the bookshelf. One of her journals had been moved. Her phone charger, which was always by the couch, had been shifted to the kitchen counter. Nothing was missing. Nothing was broken. But someone had been in here. Someone had been looking. The email returned to her mind, the warning. I know where you live. It wasn't just a threat. It was a message. She knew, with chilling clarity, that someone was watching her. Someone who knew her routines. Someone who had studied her. Priya called Rekha. Her voice was low, controlled, calm, even though inside her nerves were fraying.
I need to talk to you. We might have a problem.
That night, the tension reached a boiling point. As she sat in her dimly lit living room, trying to calm herself, a soft ping broke the silence. It was an anonymous text.
You think your walls will protect you? You think you can hide? You're still mine, Priya.
Her fingers trembled as she read the words. Her mind flashed back to the burglars, to the man she hadn't recognized. This was different. This wasn't just about things being taken. This was about control, about fear. The message ended with one final line.
See you soon.
Priya froze, staring at the phone, the dark words blurring before her eyes. Then a loud knock echoed through the door. Not the usual tap. Not a polite rattle from the neighbors. This was urgent, insistent, demanding. Her heart stopped for a beat. Was it him? The man who had followed her? Or someone else? She grabbed the bat from under the couch, her hand steady now. The fear wasn't gone, but it had transformed into something else. Determination.
Who is it?
She called through the door. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever was on the other side, but she wasn't hiding anymore. A voice responded.
Priya, it's the police.
Relief hit her like a wave, but it was short-lived. She opened the door. Standing in front of her were 2 officers, their faces tight with seriousness.
Miss Priya? We need to speak with you. There's been an incident.
Her stomach dropped. She stepped aside, letting them in, but already she could feel her world shifting beneath her feet. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. The police officer handed her a file. She opened it, her eyes scanning the information. The name of the man who had followed her. Nikhil Rain. A familiar face from the past. Not just a random encounter. The officers had linked him to a string of cyberstalking cases. A man with connections. Someone who had been tracking her for months. Someone with an old grudge. As they explained the investigation, Priya's mind raced. Nikhil was the one who had been there the night of the break-in. The one who had sold her laptop. The one who had now come back to finish what he'd started. But this time, Priya wasn't the one caught off guard. The game had changed. Priya wasn't just protecting her home. She was protecting herself and everything she had built. The fight she was in now wasn't just physical. It was psychological, emotional, and it was becoming more personal with every passing day. Her old self, the one who had sat frozen on the floor, terrified and vulnerable, she was gone. She had built something stronger. Something he couldn't take. Not without consequences. The city felt different now. The streets of Pune were the same, but for Priya, every corner seemed to hold an unspoken tension. Every shadow a reminder of what she had built herself to withstand. And the enemy she knew was still lurking, watching, waiting. It was early morning when she received the final message. She had been awake all night, staring at the ceiling, her mind relentless with thoughts of Nikhil. She knew it was only a matter of time before he made his move. The text was short, brutal. Single line.
Tonight, I'll come for you.
Priya read the message over and over. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a countdown. And for the first time since this all began, she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. That evening, Priya didn't go to the NGO. She didn't call Rekha. She didn't do anything to appear like she was still living her normal life. Tonight was different. She was preparing. The reinforced steel door, the security cameras, the baseball bat, they weren't just props. They were parts of the armor she had forged over the past months. But now she would need more. She had been researching not just self-defense tactics but the psychology of predators. How they think, how they stalk, how they reveal themselves. She sat at the kitchen table, writing down everything she could remember about Nikhil. The way he'd moved that night, the way he'd spoken. She retraced every interaction with the same obsessive precision that had once helped her in her corporate job, but now with a much more dangerous purpose. This wasn't about work anymore. This was about survival. As the sun set, Priya donned a simple outfit. Black hoodie, dark jeans, boots. She moved quietly through the apartment, checking every corner, ensuring everything was in place. The door was locked. The windows sealed. Her phone, her backup, her emergency numbers, all set. Her pulse quickened when she heard the faintest knock at the door. Not loud enough to be an announcement. Just a tap, like a shadow knocking on the walls of her life. She glanced at the clock, 8 p.m. He was early. Her heart raced, but her hands were steady. She waited. The knock came again, this time more forceful. Priya stood by the door, her back pressed against the wall, a knife hidden in her sleeve, the bat within reach. She held her breath. Another knock. Then a voice.
Priya, it's me. Open the door.
Her stomach twisted. Nikhil. She recognized the low, mocking tone instantly. But there was something different in his voice this time. A calm, confident menace, like a predator savoring the moment. For a heartbeat, Priya hesitated. There was 1,000 different ways this could go wrong, but she'd been preparing for this. She knew his playbook now. He'd come here to scare her, to make her feel powerless again. But she wouldn't let him. Not this time. With a single, deliberate motion, she pulled open the door. Nikhil stood there, grinning, but his smile faltered when he saw her standing tall. No fear in her eyes. No weakness. He saw the bat resting against the couch. The sharp gleam in her hand as she held the knife. He underestimated her.
Thought you'd be easier to break.
He said with a sneer. Priya's lips curled into a tight smile.
You didn't learn anything the last time, did you?
The tension between them crackled like an electric charge. Nikhil stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. Priya stood her ground. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't running. She was confronting him face to face.
You think you can intimidate me? After everything you've done? You're nothing.
Priya spat, her voice steady but filled with the fire of months of anger and betrayal.
You came here because you think you can control me. But I'm not the same person who cowered in fear before you.
Nikhil laughed, but there was an edge to it.
You're just a woman. You don't think I can finish what I started? I've been watching you. You're just a little girl pretending to be strong. But I'm the one in control here.
Priya didn't flinch.
Not anymore.
In one fluid motion, she launched herself at him, using the bat to sweep his legs out from under him. Nikhil barely had time to react before he was on the ground, stunned. She stood over him, the bat raised.
You had your chance. But you've crossed the line. I'm not going to let you ruin anyone else's life.
Nikhil scrambled to his feet, wiping the blood from his lip. His expression twisted with fury.
You think you're untouchable now, don't you? That door won't protect you forever.
I'm not hiding anymore.
Priya responded, her voice low, unwavering.
And this is where you learn that I'm not afraid of you.
She swung the bat again, but this time she didn't wait for him to retaliate. She stepped to the side and grabbed the knife from her sleeve, holding it at the ready, a subtle threat. Don't move. Nikhil's bravado cracked. He could see it now. Priya wasn't just defending herself. She had become someone who could defeat him. Someone he underestimated. Someone stronger than the shadow he tried to cast over her. The standoff lasted only a few seconds, but to Priya it felt like hours. Every muscle in her body screamed to be ready, every instinct telling her to stay in control. And then he turned and ran. Without another word, without another threat. He bolted out the door, disappearing into the night. Priya didn't immediately move. She stood in the middle of the apartment, heart pounding, bat in hand. She'd done it. She'd faced him and won. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of him. Not of anyone. She dropped the bat to the floor and let out a long, shaky breath. The tension in her body, the build-up of months of fear, finally released. She'd built a fortress around her mind. But tonight she had become something more. Unstoppable. The next morning, Priya sat at her desk, her hands steady as she typed. She opened her blog, ready to share what had happened. The truth of it all. Her journey wasn't over, far from it. There would be scars and maybe there would always be a shadow. But she had a message now. A message for anyone who had been silenced. She clicked publish on her latest post.
This is not your fight alone. It's all of ours. You are stronger than you know.